Hi everybody. In today's video, I want to talk about one of the more advanced strategies that I use to manage risk when entering double-sided DLMM positions. This method has consistently helped me improve my entry positions and reduce my overall risk. When it comes to double-sided pools, you need both sides of the pool, so you need both tokens. So for example, if I was to enter a Fartcoin pool, I need Fartcoin tokens and I need some SOL tokens. And generally speaking, what people will do is they'll go to a DEX like Jupiter, for example, and they'll buy that Fartcoin there directly on Jupiter. When you do that, you're immediately exposing yourself to a couple of different things. First of all, exact entry risk. So when you go and buy a token on BullX or Jupiter, you're buying it at an exact price. So that's the very first thing. Next, there's the slippage losses. So whenever you perform that trade, there will be some slippage that is involved with it. For something like Fartcoin, there might not be as much slippage because of the amount of liquidity there is for Fartcoin. But when it comes to all those new shitcoins that you're creating the double-sided DLMMs for, there will without a doubt be some slippage. And that slippage will impact that entry price plus the extra that you pay for the slippage. So there's that. There's the trading fees that you're going to be paying, and there's the immediate downside exposure that you have as soon as you buy the token. So as soon as you buy that token, you are hoping that at some point, be it immediately or shortly after, that the price of that token is going to rise. Instead of buying directly on the DEX, here's what I'll do instead. I will create a single-sided pool to go ahead and actually accumulate the Fartcoin that I need to open up that double-sided pool that I want to create for Fartcoin SOL, right? And I will only enter that double-sided pool if I've accumulated the Fartcoin that I need through this single-sided pool that I've created. This approach provides a couple of different advantages. First of all, there's the lower average entry price. So because I've used a bid-ask strategy, which I'm going to talk about next, because I've used a bid-ask strategy to accumulate that Fartcoin, what that means is I didn't go to a DEX and buy that Fartcoin at the exact market value of Fartcoin at that time. I bought it for less and less. And so that lowers my overall entry price for Fartcoin. Second of all, there's the fee accumulation. So when I enter that single-sided pool, not only is my SOL being switched out to Fartcoin, but I'm also earning more Fartcoin through the fees, right? And I could earn some SOL as well if the price goes up and down before it goes really low again. But the point here is that not only am I getting Fartcoin in exchange for my SOL, I'm also getting the fee-based Fartcoins as well, and potentially more SOL as well. And most importantly, better downside protection. That's what this video is all about. That's what this strategy is all about. It's about protecting you from the downside risk that is associated with those double-sided pools. There's two main strategies that I use for this. First, there's bid-ask, and the second is curve. The bid-ask strategy is generally what I'll end up using for these single-sided pools, where I'm accumulating the tokens that I want to accumulate for those double-sided pools. And with that bid-ask strategy, you're lowering your entry price because the lower the price of the token goes, the more you're accumulating it, which is lowering your price more and more as it goes lower, right? Depending on the range that you've used. The second strategy that I'll use for this is the curve strategy. This is not something that is commonly used, and it doesn't help too much with the downside protection, although it is still better than using a DEX directly, that's for sure. But in cases where there's a strong uptrend in the token, where the token is extremely hot, and I need to quickly accumulate the token and not miss out on the potential fees that I might generate from that uptrend, in those cases, I will use the curve strategy. But like I mentioned, it's not something that I commonly use. It will be used in special occasions. Some of the key considerations to think about when executing this plan are as follows. You want to use lower bin steps to ensure that there's price movement and you are going to be accumulating the token that you're looking to accumulate. You want to ensure that there's lower base fees because that increases the trading activity that's going to be taking place in the specific pool. You want to monitor the market conditions closely and set appropriate ranges based on the volatility. So based on you seeing the price movement of Fartcoin at that moment, you don't want to be making a massive range, or the opposite of that. You don't want to make something that's super tight either. Let's take a look at a hypothetical scenario to explain how this works. So let's assume I buy 1,000 Fartcoins at $1. So that will cost me $1,000. The price drops 20%. And at this point, the value of my 1,000 fart coins is $800. That's a total loss of $200. Now let's assume I've done the same trade using a DLMM pool. And so in that case, what I have is I've set a single-sided sol pool. It accumulates as price drops. So as the price of fart coin goes lower and lower, it accumulates more and more fart coin. And so because it does that, I'm not directly buying fart coin at $1. I'm not buying 1,000 fart coins at $1. I'm buying fart coin more and more as the price of it goes lower. Not really buying, but my sol is getting switched out for fart coin more and more as the price of fart coin goes lower, right? And so what this will do is it will lower my average price from being directly $1 to, let's assume, 90 cents. And along that way, I'll collect some fees. And let's assume that amount in fees is $10. So, and let's assume there's the same 20% drop, just as we talked about in the directly buying from the DEX. In that case, what will happen is the value that I will have at the end of that will be $830 rather than straight up $800, right? Because I've accumulated the fees along the way and I've lowered my average entry price. And so the total loss that I'll have at the end of that will be $160 instead of $200. So you're saving some amount. It might not be a dramatic amount, but you're definitely lowering your downside risk. And in case of something like Fartcoin, that this might not be massive, but when it comes to those super volatile shitcoins that you're like providing liquidity for, this will have a dramatic impact. Some of the tips that I just want to share based on my experience of using this are as follows. First of all, always monitor the market conditions. So based on the momentum, based on how the token is doing, and based on how the overall market is doing, you might have to fully pull out of the single-sided pool that you have going. Because by going into this single-sided pool to accumulate tokens for this double-sided pool, you will without a doubt be missing out on all the fees that will be generated from straight up buying from a DEX and entering into the position. So that is something that you need to consider. Like, although you are reducing your downside risk, you are also reducing the amount of fees that will be generated by this like double-sided pool, right? So unless you are like extremely rapid at doing this, it can be difficult to kind of like master this. But when you do master it, it does considerably lower your downside risk. The next tip would be to not rush the accumulation. So have some patience. Don't just drop it. Consider the rates carefully and keep track of the average price that you are like accumulating the token for. Because when you go to enter that double-sided pool, that will be something that you need to have like on the top of your mind. Because that will be the point at which, you know, where you kind of have either your break even, or depending on how much fees you're generating, that might get lowered, right? But that's something that you want to kind of like keep in mind as the accumulation is happening. And that is mostly it. That is mostly what this strategy looks like. Let's maybe take a look at an actual live example and show you how to set up one of these. This is one of the projects that I found coming out of the Solana AI hackathon that I found interesting. It's a project that I had a little bit of conviction in, and so because of that, I wanted to actually set up a pool for this, a double-sided pool. And for that double-sided pool, as we talked about in the video, I didn't want to be buying the token directly on a DEX, and so because of that, what I end up doing here is I set up a range to accumulate this token, a bid-ask based pool to try and collect more and more of this token as the value of it goes lower, because it is volatile. And so that is what I do. I set up a bid-ask based strategy to accumulate this token so that later on I can open up the double-sided pool. I set up my pool, and eventually a few minutes after some momentum in the chart, I start to actually accumulate the token. While I'm accumulating the token, I am also collecting fees, and those fees come in the way of SOL and the token itself, as the token is volatile. I could have made the range wider to try and lower my price even further, but it's because I had like some decent amount of conviction in this play, and I didn't want to be missing out on the upside. which is why I made it as tight as it is. But yeah, eventually it does end up going to the lower side of my range, and I fully accumulate the entire token. At which point I go ahead and open up my double-sided pool. The double-sided pool I leave overnight. It's not something I will generally do, especially not for a low market cap token like this. But as I mentioned, I had some conviction in this play, and so because I had the conviction, I let it run overnight. I checked on it overnight on my phone, and then the next morning when I came back, I noticed that there was some resistance near the upper bounds of where my bid-ask strategy to initially accumulate the token was. And so I decided to kind of I kind of decide on my exit strategy there. At this point, I had collected a lot of fees from all the movement in the token, and so I was happy enough to exit at that level. And so I set my level, and as soon as I see it coming up to that level, I go ahead and I exit this specific pool. I ended up with around $200 in profit. Most of it came from fees. The fact that there was a 5% base fee on the pool really helped contribute to that. And so you can kind of see the final stats here. The overall profit was around 9%. We made $180 around there in fees, and the rest of the value was kind of gained from the token rising. And that is mostly it. That is what this strategy looks like. Because I used the bid-ask strategy to accumulate this token, that drastically lowered the entry price that I entered this pool in at, and also the fact that this was a 5% pool, that really made up for any other, let's say, like downside, because I was making so much from the transactions that were taking place in the pool. And that is mostly it. That is mostly what the strategy looks like. You first go ahead and accumulate the token using a bid-ask strategy, and after you've done that, you go ahead and set up your double-sided pool. And in that double-sided pool, you will use the token that you've accumulated through that single-sided bid-ask based strategy that you used. And that's it. Thanks for watching, guys.